Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of Important Locations for Map-Based Questions. This is an initiative which has been brought to you by AptiPlus Academy for Civil Services, and I am Shayak Datta, the Faculty for Geography and Environment at AptiPlus Academy for Civil Services. Now, as you are aware that in every prelims examination, there are map-based questions which are asked, and they comprise almost 10 to 12 marks, and hence it becomes very important for us to have a look at the world map, India map, and see which are the important locations which can come in this year's prelims examination. So earlier we had dealt with two important places, one South America, the other is Europe. Today we will deal with one of the most important locations so far as UPSC prelims is concerned, that is West Asia. Now this region is always in the news, and it will always be in the news, and it will be important for every year's prelims examination, and hence it is very necessary that you pay full attention when we are going through this entire topic of West Asia. So when we are dealing with West Asia, we will be looking at the important places which has been there in the news. Again, please remember, of all the locations that are there, West Asia is the most important so far as UPSC map based questions are concerned. So let us start with our session. Now if we go to West Asia, this is a part of West Asia where first area that we'll be focusing upon is Lebanon. Now Lebanon, as you can see over here in the map I have marked out, this is Lebanon. Now Lebanon, it is a part of West Asia, and the capital of Lebanon is Beirut. As you can see over here in the map itself, Beirut has been marked. Now one thing that you should remember is sometimes UPSC will ask you questions regarding the nearest important physical feature or physical let's say physical landform. For example, over here we can see that Lebanon opens out to the Mediterranean Sea. There was a previous year question which had given you a number of countries of West Asia, and it had asked you, okay, which out of these countries do not open up or do not open out onto the Mediterranean Sea. So as you can see over here, Lebanon, it shares a coast of the Mediterranean Sea. It opens out to the Mediterranean Sea. Okay, so important location, if you see, it is the Mediterranean Sea which we have over here in Lebanon. Important neighboring countries that you can get to see over here, you have Israel to the south, and you will have Syria bordering it to its east as well as to the north. So please remember, Lebanon, it is bordered by Israel on the south and Syria to the east and to the north. Now moving on, these are the neighboring countries that we have, Israel and Syria. Now question is why this particular country was in the news, that is why Lebanon was in the news. Now Lebanon was in the news because we get to see that there were multiple civil protests which had taken place in Lebanon. Now why was that? Because the government had planned to impose taxes on gasoline, tobacco, VoIP calls, etc. Okay, the government, it had decided, or it had taken a decision to impose taxes on gasoline, on tobacco, on VoIP calls, etc. And that led to civilian protests taking place in Lebanon, especially in cities like Beirut and all. Slowly these protests, they shifted to other issues as well. So initially it had started with the imposition of taxes on these kind of commodities, but later on we get to see that the protest slowly shifted to other issues, as well as, for example, the sectarian rule in the country. Similarly, rising unemployment, that was again another very important issue. Again, stagnant economy was also an issue regarding which Lebanon experienced a lot of protests. Corruption, failure of the government to provide the basic services like electricity, these were the kind of issues due to which people started protesting in Lebanon, and that is why Lebanon was in the news. Okay, so you have to remember, first of all, the location of Lebanon. Lebanon, it is located in West Asia. It is surrounded by Israel and Syria, and on another side we get to see the Mediterranean Sea is present. Lebanon was the scene of a lot of civilian protests which initially had started because of the imposition of taxes on commodities like gasoline, on tobacco, VoIP calls, etc. But later on the protests, it shifted to other issues, for example, rising unemployment, sectarian rule. So there was a lot of chaos, a lot of political instability which was there in case of Lebanon. Now, importantly, Lebanon will have a Mediterranean type of climate. Okay? Again, very important type of climate regarding which you should be aware about the features of the Mediterranean type of climate. So, Mediterranean type of climate, it is seen in case of Lebanon. There are multiple features in case of Mediterranean type of climate. For example, when it comes to Mediterranean climate, you should be aware that in case of one very characteristic feature of Mediterranean climate is this: that during the summer, all the places which experience Mediterranean type of climate, they will experience drought. During summer there will be drought. During winter there will be winter rainfall which is seen. Okay, Mediterranean type of climate during summer will experience drought. During winter they will experience winter rainfall. Also, we get to see that in case of Mediterranean type of climate, they will be affected by shifting of wind belts. They will be affected by the shifting of wind belts. So what will happen is sometimes they will come under the effect of westerlies. Sometimes they will also come under the effect of the trade winds. So shifting of wind belts, that is again a very characteristic feature of the Mediterranean type of climate. Similarly, because of the summer drought, you will get to see in these areas the vegetation is very scarce type of vegetation. Most of the vegetation that is found in such areas, there will be xeric vegetation. What is meant by xeric or xerophytic? Xerophyte means those kind of vegetation which are capable of tolerating arid conditions. So over here also you will get to see such kind of vegetation is what is found. Olive is a very important tree which is found over here, and similarly these areas, like all those areas which experience Mediterranean type of climate, they are very famous for the growth of grapes. So you will find these areas where grapes are grown, those either if it is a country in, let's say, Europe, then from that grapes they will prepare wine. So that is why you will find countries like France, Spain, Portugal, all of these, Italy and all, which have a Mediterranean type of climate, they are famous for their wines. Similarly over here you will find they will make kishmish, or what we call as raisins from these grapes. So one thing is it experiences Mediterranean type of climate. Similarly, Beirut was also in the news. It is the capital of Lebanon, and it was again in the news because there was a lot of civilian protest which was taking place against corruption, against poor civic facilities and amenities. What you have to remember is this: in Lebanon, it has a mixture of Muslim as well as Christians. It is not a completely Muslim country. It is a mixture of Muslims as well as Christians. So that is Lebanon, and why Lebanon was in the news. We'll move on to our next country of West Asia. Next country is Jordan. So where is Jordan first? You see, this is Jordan. So very important thing is you remember the location of Jordan and the surrounding countries. So when we look at Jordan in the map, you can see that Jordan is an example of a landlocked country. Jordan is an example of a landlocked country. And it is the only landlocked country in this region. It is the only landlocked country in this region. What is meant by a landlocked country? Landlocked country basically implies that it does not open out to a sea or to an ocean. Okay? A landlocked country basically implies that it does not open out to a sea or an ocean. As you can see over here, Jordan, it does not open out to the Mediterranean Sea, neither does it open out to an ocean. Yes, there is a small sea which is called as the Dead Sea, but it is more like a salt lake. It is not exactly a sea, because the Dead Sea is also an example of a landlocked sea. Okay, so it is locked, it is surrounded by land on all its sides. So it is not exactly a sea, it is more of a large lake, you can say, like a large salt lake. So please remember, Jordan, it does not open out to any sea as such. Okay, and Jordan, as you can see from the map itself, which are the surrounding countries of Jordan? So over here, as we can see, that to the east, Jordan has Saudi Arabia. To the northeastern side, there is Iraq. To the northern side, there is Syria. To the western side, there is Israel. And to the south, you have this Persian Gulf over here, but it does not share any border with Egypt as such. Okay, so please remember, you can see, you can expect that UPSC might ask you a question that Lebanon will share a border with Jordan. Okay, so let's say UPSC will ask a question something like this: which out of these countries do not share a border with Jordan? And in that, apart from all these countries, they might also put in a country like Lebanon. You should be aware that Lebanon does not have a border with Jordan. Lebanon does not have a border with Jordan. Okay. Next, we'll talk a little bit regarding another very important area which is here, which is called as Palestine. So Palestine, as you are aware, Palestine, you will find it will always be in the news again because of the conflict between Israel and Palestine. I will not go into the history of it. You can read it yourself regarding the entire history of the Israel-Palestine conflict. But there are some important areas over here about which you should be aware. For example, you can see certain areas like Golan Height. We'll discuss about it in a while. Similarly, Tel Aviv. Okay, Tel Aviv is there. Similarly, Jerusalem is there, and it was also in the news, and why we will discuss in a while. When we talk about Palestine, then what is the exact location of Palestine? What is the exact location of Palestine? Please understand, Palestine, it is there are two parts of Palestine. Which are the two parts? One part, as you can see over here in the map itself, you should be very careful to and understand this. This is one part of Palestine. This part of Palestine is what is referred to as the Gaza Strip. This part of Palestine is referred to as the Gaza Strip. Now, this Gaza Strip is separated from the other part of Palestine, and that is nothing but the West Bank area. So, this area, this is the West Bank area, this is the Gaza Strip, and these two together comprise Palestine. Palestine. In between, what you have? In between you have Israel. This entire part, this orange part is Israel. So you find Palestine, it is divided into two parts. One part is West Bank, one part is the Gaza Strip, and they are physically separated from one another. So why was this part in the news, Israel-Palestine area? Because number one, we get to see there was an university, or there is an university called as the Birzeit, or Birzeit, Birzeit University, which is in Palestine. Now, why was that in the news? That was in the news because we get to see India has given a $3 million grant for the construction of a Palestine-India Techno Park, and its location will be in this Birzeit University, which will help in improving the cultural connect between India and Palestine. Okay, so Palestine, over here we get to see there is an university which is called as Birzeit, or Birzeit, Birzeit University, and we get to see that India has given a $3 million grant for the construction of what? For the construction of a Palestine-India Techno Park. Palestine-India Techno Park, which will be located where? It will be located in this university. And why is that important? That is important because it will help in improving the cultural relationship between India and Palestine. Here we get to see another important area, that is the Dead Sea. As you can see over here, the Dead Sea. Dead Sea, it is a landlocked sea, and it is having one of the highest salinity. Okay, very important. You might already be aware about the Dead Sea, that you can actually, if you see videos of the Dead Sea, then you'll be able to see that there are tourists who are reading newspapers while floating on the Dead Sea. So basically the salinity is so high that even if you try to swim, I mean, you won't even have to swim. Basically you will not drown in the Dead Sea. You just cannot drown. Okay, and people can hence stay afloat in the Dead Sea. As I was telling you, it is more like a very saline lake, not exactly a sea. It is a very small water body actually. Another thing that you should be aware is, why is it called as dead? It is called as dead because of the extremely high salinity. It is not possible for most of the life forms to exist over here, and that is why it is referred to as Dead Sea, because hardly any life forms will be found over here. That is why it is referred to as the Dead Sea. Okay, so just have a look, okay, Dead Sea and which are the countries surrounding the Dead Sea. So on one side you will find there is Jordan. Okay, so one side you have Jordan, you have Palestine as well, and you will also have Israel. So be very careful, okay, which are the countries. You have Jordan, you have Palestine, and you have Israel. These are the countries which surround the Dead Sea. Okay, now moving on to another important sea that we get to see in this West Asia region, and that is the Caspian Sea. Again, very important sea over here, Caspian Sea. And this is again an area from which you find UPSC has asked questions, and it can ask more questions in the future, and hence it is important that you know about this particular area, Caspian Sea. First of all, whenever you are looking at an area, it is important that you see, okay, which are the countries surrounding this particular sea. So when we are talking about Caspian Sea, let's have a look. You have Turkmenistan on the eastern side, Turkmenistan on the eastern side. You have Kazakhstan on the northeastern side. Okay, Turkmenistan and Kazakhstan together are found in the eastern side. Towards the northwestern side, you will have Russia. Again, Turkmenistan, Kazakhstan on the eastern side. Western side may you will have Russia. You will also have Azerbaijan. You will have Azerbaijan over here. And to the south you will have Iran. To the south you will have Iran. Okay, so be very careful. Turkmenistan, Kazakhstan, Russia, Azerbaijan, Iran. These are some of the countries which we get to see which surrounds the Caspian Sea. So let us have a look at Caspian Sea. Caspian Sea, it is the world's largest inland body of water. Very important. It is the world's largest inland body of water. World's largest inland body of water. Inland body, as you can understand, it basically means that it is also a landlocked sea. So there is no opening. It does not open out to any other sea or ocean as such. It is surrounded by land on all the sides. So it is the world's largest inland body of water with a surface area of around 3,71,000 square kilometers. And therefore it has characteristics which are common to both sea as well as lakes. Okay, so there has been a very long pending dispute or a very long pending controversy as to whether we should be calling the Caspian Sea to be a sea or should we call it as a lake. Okay, so it has characteristics, and why is that so? Because it has characteristics which are common to both sea as well as lakes. Hence it is also classed, it is also sometimes called as the world's largest lake, or it is a full-fledged sea, because it is not exactly a sea as such. So hence it is sometimes referred to as the world's largest lake. Okay, so there has been even conferences which have been held among the littoral states, that is the states which share or which open out to the Caspian Sea. These states or these countries, they have appeared or they have attended conferences together in order to take a decision as to whether we should be calling the Caspian Sea to be a sea or to be a lake. So we get to see these are the countries which surround the Caspian Sea. You have Kazakhstan to the northeast, you have Russia to the northwest, you have Azerbaijan to the west, Iran to the south, and finally Turkmenistan to the southeastern side. The Caspian Sea, it is home to a wide range of species. So unlike the Dead Sea, which is saline in nature, this is not exactly a saline lake as such, and hence we get to see it is home to a large number of species. Aquatic species are there, and it is best known for caviar and oil industries. It is best known for caviar and oil industries. What is meant by caviar? Caviar is considered to be one of the most expensive dishes in the entire world. Basically, caviar is nothing but fish eggs. Okay? Caviar is nothing but fish eggs, and the thing is that this particular egg comes from a very endangered species of fish, which is also called as the sturgeon. Okay, and the thing is, this is considered to be one of the most expensive dishes in the entire world, mainly because of the rarity or the rare character of the fish as such. Okay, so it is best known for caviar and for oil industries. Also, we get to see that pollution from the oil industry and the dams on rivers which drain into the Caspian Sea, it has had negative effects on the organisms which are living in the sea. Its main freshwater inflow, that is the Volga River, its main freshwater inflow is nothing but the Volga River. There are 6 sturgeon species which are found over here. Okay? There are 6 sturgeon species which are found over here. And which are the 6 sturgeon species? We get to see one is called as the Russian, one is called as the Russian, one is called as the bastard, one is called as the Persian, starlet, starry and beluga. These are all native to the Caspian Sea. Okay, these are all native to the Caspian Sea, and these are the 6 sturgeon species which are found over here: Russian, the bastard, the Persian, the starlet, the starry and the beluga. All of these are different examples of or different subspecies of the sturgeon. Sturgeon is a species of fish, and these are all native to the Caspian Sea. Now these sturgeon fish, they will yield roe. Roe is nothing but the eggs. Okay, so they will give out eggs, also called as roe, and finally these eggs, they are processed into caviar. But what has happened is, because of the extreme demand for this caviar, overfishing has taken place, and because of overfishing we get to see that it has resulted in the depletion of most of these sturgeon species. Okay, so the number of these sturgeon, the population of these sturgeon species, it has fallen drastically due to the extremely high demand for caviar, which is considered to be a delicacy, and hence that has made the fish become even more rare. It was already quite rare, now it has become more rare. So please remember Caspian Sea and the countries surrounding it: Turkmenistan, Kazakhstan, Russia, Azerbaijan and Iran. And you remember the Caspian Sea, it is also considered to be the world's largest lake, because it is surrounded by land on all the sides. Plus you remember the Caspian Sea is very, very famous mainly because of the sturgeon species which are found over here. And also these sturgeon are under threat because of the huge demand for caviar. Going further, we get to see another lake was in the news, and it is the lake, or sometimes also called as Sea of Galilee. So either it is called as Sea of Galilee, also it is called as Lake Tiberias. Okay, please remember both of them are nothing but the same location. Sea of Galilee or Lake Tiberias, it refers to the same location. And where is it? This is the location. So you can see over here to the northern part of Israel. Okay, to the northern part of Israel you have this Lake Tiberias or the Sea of Galilee, and that is present at the border between Israel and Syria. It is present at the border between Israel and Syria. Please remember Lake Tiberias or Sea of Galilee, present at the border between Israel and Syria, and this was in the news. Now why was it in the news? See, it is the lowest freshwater lake on earth. It is the lowest freshwater lake on earth, and it is the second lowest lake in the world after the Dead Sea. So that is why I was saying Dead Sea, it is not exactly a sea, rather it is like a landlocked, it's like a large salt lake. Okay, so it is the lowest freshwater lake on earth, that is Lake Tiberias, and it is the second lowest lake in the world. Now you have to be very careful over here, because when it comes to Lake Tiberias or when it comes to the Sea of Galilee, it is a freshwater lake. Okay, it is a freshwater lake, and that is why we are saying it is the lowest freshwater lake on earth. But if you take all the lakes into consideration, that is not just freshwater lake but also saline lakes, then it becomes the second lowest, because the lowest lake in the world is the Dead Sea, which is saline in nature. So in terms of freshwater lake, it is the lowest, but if you take all the lakes into consideration, this is second lowest after the Dead Sea. Next thing that you should remember, this particular lake, it is fed by the Jordan River. It is fed by the Jordan River, and this Jordan River, it supplies water to Israel. Sorry, this particular sea, the Sea of Galilee or the Lake Tiberias, it is the most important source of water for Israel, because it supplies almost 1/3 of entire Israel's water requirements. Remember, Lake Tiberias, it is important because it, first of all, you see the location, it lies between Israel and Syria. Now Israel and Syria, they have fought wars in the past, and hence it is lying in a very disputed kind of location. Here you will also find Golan Heights, about which we will learn in a while. But for the time being, just remember the location of the Sea of Galilee and Lake Tiberias. What is the significance? Significance is it is the lowest freshwater lake in the on earth, and it is also the second lowest lake in the world after the Dead Sea. What else? It is fed by the Jordan River. So the Jordan River drains into Lake Tiberias or the Sea of Galilee. And the third thing that you should remember is that this Lake Tiberias or the Sea of Galilee, it is significant because it supplies Israel with almost 1/3 of its water requirements. Okay. And apart from that, we get to see that near this Lake Tiberias, you have Jerusalem also, which is another disputed area. And it is also a very historically significant area. So that is also present nearby. Acha. Next up, we were talking a little bit regarding Palestine. So regarding Palestine, I showed you that Palestine, it is divided into two parts. One part is what is called as the Gaza Strip, and the other is what is called as the West Bank. So this entire area, as you can see in the map, is West Bank, and it is lying just near the border with Jordan. Okay, so West Bank area, and let us know a little bit regarding this West Bank. Now, why is it called as West Bank? It lies on the western bank of River Jordan. Okay, so as you can see over here, you have River Jordan. River Jordan ka eastern bank mein you have Jordan, and on the western bank you have this West Bank area of Palestine. So that is why it is called as West Bank. Okay, as you know कि river के दोनों sides को क्या कहा जाता है? The two sides of the river, they are referred to as banks of the river. So eastern bank of the Jordan River has Jordan. Western bank of the Jordan River has the West Bank area of Palestine. It is a part of Palestine. It is a part of Palestine after the UN mandated partition, but it has been occupied by Jordan, or it was occupied by Jordan post the 1948 Arab-Israel war. Okay, it is a part of Palestine as because of the UN mandated partition which had taken place. So it is a part of Palestine, but it was occupied by Jordan after the 1948 Arab-Israel war. And this Arab-Israel war, it had taken place between whom? See, it had taken place between Israel, who was on one side, and on the other side you had some very powerful nations like Jordan was there, Egypt was there, Syria was there, Lebanon was there. And this had taken place just after Israel had got established as a nation. So you had Israel on one side, and on the other side you had all the other neighbors, for example Jordan, for example Egypt, Syria, Lebanon, and this is what is referred to as the 1948 Arab-Israel war. So basically the Arab world, or a large part of the Arab world versus Israel. However, we get to see in 1967, after another war had taken place, which is famously called as the Six-Day War. So in 1967, after the Six-Day War, Israel captured West Bank back from Jordan, but didn't hand it over to Palestine. Okay, so they captured it back from Jordan, but they did not hand it over to Palestine. The Oslo Accord, which is like a treaty, so Oslo Accord, which was signed between the Palestine Liberation Organization (PLO) and Israel, it created administrative districts with varying levels of Palestinian autonomy within each area. Okay, so over here, what happened? Okay, after the Oslo Accords, which was signed between the Palestine Liberation Organization and Israel, there were administrative districts which were established within this West Bank area, and there was varying level of Palestinian autonomy within these areas. So some parts of the West Bank are now controlled by Israel, and some parts have autonomy. Similarly, some parts of Gaza Strip are autonomous, but from time to time you will have conflicts with Israel. And Israel places of warships in front of Gaza Strip. Israel has placed warship in, basically this is the Gaza Strip, as you can see, right? and on one side you have Israel, on the other side it opens out to the Mediterranean Sea. So what sometimes Israel does, I mean, there's a lot of conflict in this area, and whenever the conflict will, the level of conflict will increase, then Israel, to apply pressure on the groups which are there, which are carrying out such kind of activities. So this kind of groups, so to apply pressure on such kind of groups, what Israel will do is that it will place warships over here in the Mediterranean Sea. So Israel will place warships in front of the Gaza Strip in order to stop supplies from coming into the Gaza Strip, and this is something which Israel will resort to, and that is why there's a lot of human rights violation also which takes place over here in the West Bank area, in the Gaza Strip area. And this conflict is something or similar to what India and Pakistan has. So a very long drawn out conflict between India and Pakistan. Similarly, you will have Israel-Palestine conflict also taking place. Okay. So this is regarding the West Bank area. Now, continuing further with Israel, another area which was there in the news is what is referred to as the Haifa Memorial. Okay. Haifa Memorial. Now, what is this Haifa Memorial all about? So, as you can see, I have put the picture over here. This is what is the Haifa Memorial, and this is present in Israel. Now, this is in Israel, and what is the significance? It is meant to honor the World War I martyrs of the Indian Army. So at that point of time, during World War I, as you can understand, India did not have an independent army of its own. Rather, we were a part of the British Imperial Army. So here we get to see some cavalry brigade of, and just for your information, this entire part of Israel during the time of World War I, it was under the Ottoman Empire, which was a very powerful empire, and it used to exist before the World War I. So you had Indian troops who were fighting under the British command, and we get to see that they had fought in a battle of Haifa, and these troops, they were able to liberate this entire area from the Ottoman Empire, and a lot of Indian soldiers had died during that conflict. This is during the World War I, and in order to commemorate their sacrifice for the liberation of Haifa, we get to see this memorial has been erected over here. So Haifa Memorial, it is present in Israel. It is meant to honor the World War I martyrs of the Indian Army, especially the lancers, basically the cavalrymen. So what had happened over here? See, in this Haifa Memorial, which is present in Israel, we get to see that this is just the history of it. Okay, the fortified town of Haifa. So as I told you earlier, Haifa was under the Ottoman Empire, so it was heavily fortified by the Ottoman Empire. So the fortified town of Haifa, it fell to a cavalry charge by the Jodhpur Lancers of the 15th Imperial Service Cavalry Brigade on 23rd September 1918. Okay, so this entire town, it fell because it was liberated by the heroic actions of the Jodhpur Lancers. And this Jodhpur Lancer, it belonged to the 15th Imperial Service Cavalry Brigade, and this entire battle had started on the 23rd of September 1918. And this event, it is taught to the children in the local schools. A commemorative service is now held annually at this memorial, which is attended by members of the diplomatic corps and representatives of the Indian Armed Forces. So every year we get to see that a commemoration ceremony is held, or a commemoration service is held over here in order to pay respects to all those heroic souls who had died to liberate Haifa from the Ottoman Empire. Achha, over here you will also find another important location which was also there in the news, and this is what is called as the Mount Sodom Salt Caves. Mount Sodom Salt Caves. Also these are called as Malham Cave. The other name for Mount Sodom Salt Cave is Malham Cave. And this Malham Cave is present beneath Mount Sodom. It is present beneath Mount Sodom. What is this Mount Sodom? It is the largest mountain of Israel. Please remember the name. This is very, very important. Mount Sodom Salt Cave. And this Mount Sodom Salt Cave is also referred to as Malham Cave. This Malham Cave, it is present beneath Mount Sodom. And Mount Sodom is the largest mountain of Israel. And this Mount Sodom, it is present near the southwest corner of the Dead Sea. It is present near the southwest corner of the Dead Sea. Okay. Of course, it is present in Israel. And why this was in the news is because Israeli cave explorers, they have discovered the world's longest salt cave, which is near the desert site. Now, please remember, Israel, in general, it is a very arid, it is a very desertic kind of a nation, very, very dry. Okay, so here we get to see that Israeli cave explorers, they have discovered the world's longest salt cave near the desert site, which is around 10 kilometers in length. It is around 10 kilometers in length. Okay, that is why Mount Sodom or Mount Malham, or rather Mount Sodom, was in the news, because these caves, or the longest salt cave, it has been discovered over here. So please remember Mount Sodom. What is Mount Sodom? The largest mountain of Israel. Over here we have a number of salt caves, which are also referred to as the Malham caves. And over here, which is present in the near the southwest corner of the Dead Sea, we get to see that Israeli cave explorers, they were able to discover the world's longest salt cave. Okay? Very important. World's longest salt cave was discovered over here near the desert site, which is around 10 kilometers long. Okay, so this is regarding Mount Sodom salt cave. Acha. Next important area that you should be aware of, and as I was telling you some time back only, that another very, very important area of Israel is what is called as the Golan Heights. Golan Heights, as you can see, is located at the border between Israel and Syria. Now, as you can see from the map itself, it is very much evident that the Golan Heights, it is a part of Syria, or rather earlier it used to be a part of Syria. So Golan Height, it actually lies within the jurisdiction of Syria. But then we get to see that, as I told you earlier, that there has been many such conflicts between Israel and its neighbors. So Golan Heights, it was occupied by Israel in 1967 from Syria after the end of the Six-Day War. And before 1967 and Six-Day War, we get to see that Golan Heights was in the possession of Syria. So before 1967, before the Six-Day War, Golan Heights was in the possession of Syria, but after the Six-Day War, we get to see that Israel has occupied this entire area. Now the question is, why did Israel occupy this area? Because this area is an arid area. What is the significance of this area? Why did Israel why did Israel think of capturing this area from Syria? Now that is because this area has a lot of strategic importance. It has a lot of strategic importance. As you can understand, Golan Heights, basically this area is an upraised area. So what will happen is, if you control Golan Heights, automatically that will help Israel to control the entire region, including the Sea of Galilee. As we had seen earlier, Sea of Galilee, also called as the Lake Tiberias, which is present over here only in the border between Israel and Syria. We will find the Sea of Galilee is present. So try to understand the control of the Golan Heights. Why is that important for Israel? Number one, because this is an upraised area, this is a uplifted area. So automatically, if you are over here, or if Israel is occupying this area, automatically that will give them an advantage. They will be able to see troop movements, etc. taking place. Number one. Second important thing is, as we had discussed earlier, that Lake Tiberias or the Sea of Galilee, which is again the lowest freshwater lake that we have on the earth, and the second lowest lake after the Dead Sea. This Lake Tiberias or the Sea of Galilee, as we had discussed earlier, it supplies 1/3 of entire water requirements of Israel, and hence it becomes very important that Israel controls the surrounding area of Lake Galilee. Because let's imagine a situation, if Israel does not control this area, and if Syria does something or takes control of this entire Lake Tiberias, in that case Israel will not have sufficient amount of water supply, which will result in a lot of problems for Israel. Okay, already Israel is a very, very dry area. It is a very arid area, and it is very, very essential that Israel is able to protect and preserve its water sources. So that is why it is very, very important that for Israel that it is able to preserve the Lake Tiberias or the Sea of Galilee. Okay, and hence it has decided to occupy this Golan Heights. Now, another reason why Golan Heights was in the news is because Donald Trump has officially recognized Israeli sovereignty over the occupied Golan Heights. Okay, so it was a disputed area, but we get to see that Mr. Donald Trump, who is the president of USA, he has officially recognized Israeli sovereignty over this particular area, and hence to the entire world, you can say, or to the most of the countries of the world, Golan Heights now belongs to Israel. So that is why it was in the news. Okay, so this is with regards to Israel. We'll just deal with another two area. These are two villages. One is called as Ghumar or Al Ghumar, and you have Al Bakura. Al Ghumar and Al Bakura, these are two villages, as you can see over here from the map. Here you have Al Ghumar, again present between Israel and Jordan, and Al Bakura, again present between Israel and Jordan. Now, what is the significance and why were they in the news? You see, these are two small villages which are lying along the borders of Israel and Jordan. Now, these two villages, they were leased to Israel by Jordan for 25 years for agriculture. So Jordan had given these two villages to Israel mainly to carry out agriculture for a period of around 25 years. But then what happened? Again, conflict. Again, you will have problems between the countries like Israel and its neighbors, and that resulted in Jordan pulling out, or it has pulled out of this 25-year-old landmark agreement by which it had actually given the lease to Israel. So it has now come out of it, which basically means that that treaty or that lease, it stands cancelled. So now what has happened? Jordan has basically taken these two villages back under its own sovereignty, under its own jurisdiction. So Jordan has pulled out of a 25-year-old landmark agreement which had allowed Israeli farmers to cultivate in two pieces of agricultural land. This lease has been terminated and the villages have got handed back to Jordan. Jordan, already earlier also we had seen, it is a landlocked country. So please remember these two areas. One is Al Ghumar, one is Al Bakura. Al Ghumar and Al Bakura, they originally belonged to Jordan. Jordan had given them to Israel for cultivating these areas for a period of around 25 years. But then due to rising conflict, etc., we get to see that Jordan has come out of that deal and it has taken back these two villages. So this is with regards to these two small villages, Al Ghumar and Al Bakura. Please remember the locations. Please remember the names. That is why in each of these areas I have given you specifically the locations of these areas. Okay, so what we will do is that, again, there are so many different places that we need to cover when it comes to West Asia. We will keep our lecture, this particular lecture, till here. In our next lecture, we'll continue with West Asia and we'll cover the rest of the areas which are there. Okay, so till then, till our next lecture, study hard, stay safe, and thank you so much. In our next lecture, we'll continue with the rest of the places of West Asia. There are many more that we have to see. Okay, thank you so much.
I'm an icon, man. And my girl about a 10. I should fuck her in the Benz.